Hey, Council, how are you? Thank you for being here today. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll have a roll call. Connie, could you please call the roll?
Adamson.
Here.
Gray.
Here.
Edom.
Here.
Lurick.
Here.
Ortega.
Here.
Stevens. I see you, Stevens. Glad.
Here. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move to agenda item number 2. We'll go ahead and get the meeting going. Jim Kruger, Chief Financial Officer, will discuss the upcoming budget process with council members and procedures to be used during the fiscal year 2022 budget meetings. So what we're going to do here is Jim is here with us, as you can see, and he is all ears. The council has expressed the desire to change the way the budgeting process is. I use process very intently of how we get to the budget. This meeting today is not scheduled to discuss what taxes we're going to talk about, what things we plan on doing in it. It's just 100% the process of how we get to the bottom line there. And so the process, as some on the council remember, a couple years ago we changed it. Roger, you were involved in the major part of the change before with Steve Brown, and changing it the way that you wanted to do that. We're in the process again of changing it again. I'm not sure what people are looking for. And so today's meeting literally is about the process. Jim is going to be taking notes, suggestions. He will be back to us on the 18th with what he considers the best practice for moving forward with the process is. That's what I've asked him to kind of take this meeting, kind of pull everybody's stuff together, take his institutional knowledge of years of municipal government budgeting, and bring it back to us, kind of tell us and lay out how the process will go on the 18th. And so that being said, I'm going to try to be as quiet as I can, but I'm going to try to keep some order going and keep the meeting moving forward. And hopefully we can come out with a good outcome today. So, but Jim, do you have anything to add to that, or before we turn it over to the council?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. So it probably only looks like I've been around the budget process for 100 years, but I've actually only been through maybe about 40 budgets in my career. So despite the fact that I look older than I actually am, it has been about that many years, about 40 years that I've gone through the budget process. So as the mayor mentioned, certainly I have some sense of what best practices might be. And I've had some experience in Idaho, some experience in Oregon, and some experience over in that state that's over on the West Coast as well. And so with that in mind, I certainly, as the mayor said, he's going to try to keep silent as much as possible. I don't know how that's going to work. I'm sure it'll work fine. But I'll probably try to keep as silent as possible as well, and just respond to any questions that you might have. And even though I have gone through a number of budget processes, there's always a new way to do it. So I'm open to that, and want to do whatever it is that the city council would like to see happen in this upcoming budget process.
Okay, thank you, Jim. So with that, council, I'm just going to turn the floor over to you. Roger, you've got your hand up first, and so we'll just let's jump right to you, Roger.
Okay. One of the things that I will probably want to do some screen sharing as I go through this. I'm going to have hopefully a fairly short but pointed presentation here. Jim, I'd like to thank you for being on board. We have waited long for you to be here, and we look forward to the guidance you can give us. However, we wanted to get a better handle on the budget this year than what some of us felt we had last year. It was maybe a debacle is too hard a word, but I don't think so when you look at how we ended up having to save our advertising in the paper and stuff like that because things were wrong. So I really want to expand our context for how we exercise our fiduciary duty as the council members. I think we need to look at developing budgets. And so to avoid the debate of last year and to kind of credential my statements, because sometimes they're not taken as researched and factual, that's why I want to go to some of this screen sharing today. But I don't see the ability to screen share yet.
So Ken, I think, is working to get that done. Yep, looks like he's got my thumbs up. Okay.
Okay. Okay, the thing I want to go
There you
to
go.
is, there you go. Okay. Now, the other part of this is it takes my navigation off my computer. The national cities, it's called the National Group of Cities, National, I forget the exact name, but it's a widely held group of city accountants. And one of the things that they put out in one of their newsletters or articles was that there are really 4 things you try to accomplish with a budget. A budget should be a statement of priorities. A budget should be a strategic planning tool. It should be a control tool, and it should be a management tool. The second thing that I want to bring out is that when I looked at best practices, I pulled up Missoula, Montana, and it wasn't an intention, it was by de facto choice. And I was amazed at how Missoula, Montana has a budget process that is far more detailed and comprehensive than we have. I hope that as we look at what they do, we can avoid some of last year. We can be framed by a strategic budget that is looking at what the relevant data is that helps us provide or establish a context in which we need to have our budget as we determine where we're at and where we need to go. So when I looked at the Missoula budget, the first thing I found was that they have basically 4 premises that they try to accomplish with their budget. First, they address a 5-year plan in developing their budget. The second thing they do, and this is really a hard thing to do because it's freezing up my screen or blocking my screen, but they look at a comprehensive budget, a budget that is prepared and it looks at all the funds. It knows that there are going to be competing requests, but those requests are all held in abeyance until they are able to configure according to their strategic plan. Then there is an understanding of what the budget is supposed to do, and they look for certain budgetary emphases as they move forward. As I looked at their budget further, I realized that they actually have a Citizens Academy. We have a Citizens Academy for the police department, but we don't have anything related to a Citizens Academy for a budget. And when I went through what they do with their Citizens Academy, the first thing I found was that they really go over property taxes and what they all consist of. And then they went through a lot of graphs and everything else. I want to take you down, if my computer will move. They live on their sheet things like we have, like the service calls, police, and they showed real up. They showed themselves being real up. They looked at fire department. They also then looked at their street miles and looked at how they were performing there. But one thing that we never do, we never look as one of the key ingredients what we're doing as a city for population growth. They're right up there front. They put it right in there with the trends for everything else. So they look for hard data that frames where they are at. They go on, and I'm just going to go through this. I'm just using this as showing a context, so to speak. They know that they have to compete with other cities in Montana. So they break out their revenue that they have to generate by a per capita basis, so they know where they compare with the other cities they compete against. Then they take those comparisons even farther in terms of taxes and assessments that's converted to mill levies. They take it to mill value. They look at the value of newly taxable property, and that's probably our new construction. And they know where they've been and where they're going with that. Then they go and they do an overview of the percent of taxes from their base and how it's been changing over the years. And if you look at this slide, it just simply illustrates that there has been a great shift in their tax base. They were once getting more from commercial properties than they are now, and they're getting more from residential properties now than they were 20 years ago. They also, because they operate within a context in the state of Montana, they have a comparative chart on Montana taxes, and they chart out what sales tax and property tax and income taxes are doing on all the different segments of their population. They know their people, and they know where they're hitting them with different things they do. Then one of the things I thought was great is they go to they produced a survey, and that survey was simply, and I don't know if they had other questions, but they listed the results of a survey that showed that they wanted to know what the people thought about doing what I would call a tourist tax, a tourism tax. And they found that it was very widely supported in their community. Because it was widely communicated that way, they decided that they needed to have, and if you look, they've got a very long strategic plan. They have as one of the components of that plan that they need to be advocates at the legislature for finding a diversification that allows for a tourism tax. That's what their people desire. So when you go through all of this, you find that they are a city, and they've been noted as well in other areas. They're a city that's doing things, and they're growing, and they're vibrant. And my phone just picked up on me thinking I was trying to tell it something. Got one too far. Oh, this is hard on these little computers. One of the things I wanted to bring out was Twin Falls. Twin Falls, when they developed their budget, and I'm not able to call it up, I don't know why. When they developed their budget, they had their city manager presented 9 goals that they discussed in developing their budget. I'm not going to go into all those 9 goals, but I would highlight that they talked about limiting tax collections by not taking the full 3%. They talked about preserving foregone balance. They talked about other things, but I just think that there's a context that we don't explore often when we develop our budget. And then the final thing I wanted to throw in, if you'll let me do it now. It's just this, that their budget, when you go to Logan, I looked at Logan as well because I was looking at comparable type of cities. And when I looked at Logan, I found out that they had a centralized dispatch center. I'm not saying that that's what we've got to talk about today, but I think it's something that illustrates for us how other people have looked for flexibility in what they do. Now then, in full disclosure, when I read through their budget preparation further, I found out that Logan really struggled to get support for an external management of their golf course, which is in contrast with us. So that's full disclosure. They're able to do a centralized dispatch, but not a centralized golf course, so to speak. And I just wanted to iterate here that I really think that we are in a position to have a clear, stated strategy that looks out more than just 1 year at a time in our budget. I think we're in a place to let data drive the context for the decisions we make. I think we make too many emotional decisions and not data-driven decisions. I think we need to recognize the budget we develop is the essential driver for what our city looks like. We're setting priorities with this budget. And if all we do is go in and compartmentalize into different silos, and then we try to define which silo seems to have made the best presentation, we're not taking control of our city. We're the ones that's supposed to manage all the silos and to produce results for our city. So this is just an overview, an orientation to help us know that other cities are diving deep in other ways to develop strategic plans, to look at how all they do impacts all their people in different ways, and to be focused on how they can best develop a budget that leads their city forward. Okay, you can take me off screen share.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I know that Jim's got a ton of notes on that. I've got a ton of notes on that as well. So Roger, thank you.
Yeah, I wish, when you don't get to rehearse this on go to meeting, and then people's faces pop up and it blocks your bar and everything else. Had I known that it would go up at the top, I might have put my bar at the bottom or something, or over on the left side. But anyway, it's just something that gives us a context for our thought process.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right, Chris, it looks like you've got your hand up.
She's muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I have just a few points. One is, and I will type this up and send it to Ann for distribution. So, it'll make it easier. I know it's hard to remember stuff when it's read. So we don't currently have a clear running record of adjustments that we make from meeting to meeting, and a clear record of council decisions and the reasons that we made the adjustments that we did. And likewise, we don't have a running record of changes that get made between council meetings in conferences between the mayor and the CFO, when they recognize that there are adjustments that may need to be made. Point number two, we don't have any written criteria-based protocols for deciding what I call ad hoc funding requests that fall outside the annual budgeting process. We have a couple of those upcoming. Third, we don't have any written criteria-based application process for nonprofits to ensure responsible council decisions and a level playing field for all applicants. I believe that it would be beneficial rather than having the presentations by the departments the way they are now, if council members could get those PowerPoints or presentation documents ahead of time so that we could study them and come up with our questions. And then when staff is in front of us, instead of reading their PowerPoint to us, we could actually begin asking questions and having a conversation. I think it might cut down on the time required and be more respectful of staff time. 2 more points. When we get department requests, we really don't have any kind of template for getting cost benefit justifications. We don't really always get a clear explanation of how the request is going to either improve public services or save money in the long run or immediately. And finally, sometimes it appears that budget requests from departments are not fully burdened. And what I mean by that is that associated or tangential costs beyond the central expenditure may not always be fully factored into the cost of the request. And as I say, I will type these up and send them to Ann for distribution. That's it for me.
So Chris, I have one question for you, and I just as a clarification, your second one, no protocols for ad hoc funding requests. I assume that was your third, you're the same as your third one, but that wasn't. You had 2 and then 3. What exactly do you mean by the ad hoc funding requests?
Right. So when we get requests for expenditures that fall outside the formal budgeting process. So we published our budget, we've allocated our funds, and then for all kinds of very legitimate reasons, a department comes in and says, you know, hey, we want to encumber, you know, $71,000, you know, out of capital contingency for XYZ. You know, what's our protocol for that? Because they come in kind of at random and we consider them kind of at random. And, you know, that from my perspective, that's not, I'm not always comfortable with that, and it's nobody's fault. I'm just not always comfortable with that process.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Jim, did you have any?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify maybe what you had said as your number 1 item as well. Chris,
Yeah,
you said adjustments by council, running record of adjustments by council. Does that really relate to the second item that?
No.
Okay.
No, so what I mean, and I again, like Roger, I'm not trying to, you know, say this is how it should be set up. But as an example, I would love it if we had some kind of a spreadsheet and that was consistent. You know, we didn't get a republished version each time. So we have a spreadsheet, we make decisions, we say, you know, gosh, this is a high priority, low priority, medium priority for us. That's recorded. And then, you know, here are our projected sales tax revenue, you know, whatever. And then if that gets adjusted, we get the same spreadsheet back, but with an adjustment column. And it says, okay, we're, you know, increasing, decreasing our sales tax production, and by X amount, you know, and that's all on one sheet. So that's what I mean by a running record. So you literally have the history of decision-making and adjustments, because I found last year that there were situations where it was like, wait, we did this. No, we did that. Wait, we said, well, wait, I thought we said, why did we do this? And I just think, you know, to Roger's point, the more we can eliminate those kinds of conversations and have the facts in front of us, it's going to benefit all of us in a number of ways. Does that help?
That helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, all right, Council, and I apologize. Jim, did you have any questions further for Roger?
I think I picked up pretty much on what Roger
Okay,
had indicated.
okay, sounds good. Thank you. Who would like to go next? Heidi?
Yeah, one of my biggest questions, I guess, is for Jim, and if he has noticed anything. I mean, I know it's hard for him to know exactly what our budget process has been because he hasn't sat through it, but if anything has stood out to you as needing to be changed yet, or if there are any directions that you would recommend to us, and if you want to talk about that at the end, that's okay, but I was just kind of curious if you had any thoughts or feelings you wanted to share with us. I would be interested to hear that. Then I also did just want to thank the other council members for their questions and for their research. I agree with some of those concerns, specifically Chris. I share some of your concerns about capital contingency. To me, that is like emergency money, not, I know we don't like to use the term slush fund, but sometimes I feel like in a way that it's viewed as, well, we just have this here, so we can fall back on it. So that has been a concern of mine as well. And I did like those charts and graphs that Roger showed about the city comparisons. That was something I've asked for the last couple of years, but I understand it's really hard to compare apples to apples with other cities, but I do think it's helpful just to look at it as best we can and get that comparison. So I did like that, the percentage of tax base, and that those were interesting bar graphs that you had from, I think that was Missoula. So I liked that. One thing that occurred to me, again, when you brought up the survey that Missoula did, but I had been thinking about it before, I really like the ability to get input from the citizens, and I think the citizens appreciate the ability to give input to us as well. So I'm just kind of floating this out there. I don't believe that we would necessarily be looking at a tourism tax like Missoula did, but I'm curious if we could somehow incorporate what some of our perceived goals are into a survey for the citizens, so we could find out, because anecdotally we hear, well, this person wants tax relief, but then this person actually wants more services, and and so it's hard to know because we just hear from a person here or a person there. But if we actually send out like a citywide survey, to kind of find out what do our constituents really want to focus on, what is important to them. Like if they want parks and recreation, please let us know. Or if they want tax relief, please let us know. Or if they want, more emergency services, please let us know. I don't know. I know that would be difficult maybe to come up with that survey, but I'm just kind of throwing that out there as an idea to see what other people think about it.
So let me just say something here, and Chris, I'm going to get to you after everybody else is done. So write down your thought really quick, if you would. And I don't know what Montana's rules are, but like in Idaho, we've been trying to do a local option tax, and I don't know if that might be what that was, but so we'll have to look and see what some of those things look like. I think that's a good point, and so we just need to see what we can and can't do and what's reasonable and what isn't. So, but a good idea. Any other ideas, Heidi, before I jump to Claudia? Jim, did you have any questions?
I'll just, Heidi, you asked if I have come across anything yet that would indicate that maybe something that should be changed in the budget process. I'm probably going to just say at this point in time, I'm going to reserve that comment until I've heard everything from all the rest of the city council members. And then, as the mayor outlined, we're looking at providing information on February 18th back to you. And in the last 2 weeks that I've been here, it's been 2 weeks and 2 days. There's lots of things that I've come across, and we probably don't have time to go through all of those. So I'm going to just try to accentuate the items that might be helpful in the budget process. So I'll incorporate all of the input that I'm getting today, as well as, of course, from the mayor too.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Claudia. Yeah, Claudia, go ahead.
No, I know. I was saying, wait, because I was trying to unmute me. Well, I'm kind of speaking to Roger and Heidi's points about, the data, and I know we all got this, and I've looked through this, and there's a lot of the same information that Roger said, showed us that Missoula uses. I mean, there's census information in here. There's, there's just all poverty information in here. There's, acreage and valuation data in here. There's even an unemployment data in here. So I think that, and to be honest, I was kind of shocked last year at how hard it was to get data until I realized, well, I was told that we have, that our FRS system is DOS, which is, older than, I don't know, Roger. And so that then explain, I don't want to say older than Jim because you're new.
It has a longer tenure than I do, I'll say that.
But I just think when I came to that understanding, I realized then how when we're asking for data, it's overwhelming to staff to have to, 15 keystrokes, and then you have to manually input everything into an Excel spreadsheet because there's no uploading, there's no copy pasting. So I don't want to ask staff for, now that I know, I don't want to ask staff for the type of data that I want. Since these people have done it, I would like to move that we accept this as the data, our jumping off point data, since we don't have anything comparable. So that's a motion.
We don't have an action, it is an action item, but okay, there's a motion. It is an action item.
I'll second it. Claudia, could you just repeat your motion?
I just
So
want
I
to, I move that we as a council stipulate that the data that's in this book, in lieu of not having any data, that we stipulate that this is what we're going to use, because I'm not aware that we have anything else.
That data before.
Okay, yep, I'm comfortable with my second.
Claudia, is this the document you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to this.
I can't see that, I'm sorry.
That's Jim, I think Jim got a copy of that. If not, I'll get him a copy of that for sure. That's
But it's got census information, unemployment information. It's got all kinds of data and graphs and charts that we can use to kind of get a context. So I wanted to say that anyway. So that was a motion.
Hold on. Before you go on, we got a motion and a second on the floor. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Linda?
Yes. I would have or do have very serious concerns about saying that that's the data that we're accepting. I appreciate the work that Paige did on putting together that document, but there's a lot that's unknown to me that I don't feel comfortable with. I don't know exactly where all the data came from, how it might have been adjusted, or if anything was done to it. I mean, I don't think that we can just say that we know that that's the data that we're going to base our budget decisions on. I would not feel comfortable with that at all. I think we need, and you know, maybe it's a difficult thing and maybe it takes time, but any data that we're going to be, you know, using to base our decisions on and base our budget on, I think needs to come from staff. We need to know exactly where it came from, if it was adjusted in any way in order to get to some apples to apples situation. I know the page people, when they presented to us a while back, said that they had normalized certain data in order to compare cities and make it more apples to apples. And I don't know what normalize means. I don't know what they did. So I really am not comfortable with the methodology. I don't know what it is. And without knowing that, I couldn't in good conscience, you know, agree to use that data. I think that when staff present data to us, they can present it in a very thorough way and explain their methodology of how they arrived at, you know, at those numbers, any adjustments they made to those numbers, exactly what they did. They even know what questions to ask of other cities in a way that I don't know whether Paige did that or asked the right questions or has the full picture. I don't even know what's missing possibly from their data. So bottom line, I would have a lot of concerns and would not be comfortable with basing our budget on that.
Okay, Roger, you had something to
Oh, I
say.
was just going to ask, I didn't hear Claudia say that this would be the only data that we would look at.
Right.
What I heard her saying was that it can be a context that starts to frame the data we can look at and start to rely on. You know, I don't have any argument with what they did with Census Bureau. I don't have any argument with what they did from, I think they said they had a Idaho Tax Commission dump. I don't have any argument with our own records that they reviewed in terms of our budget books and some stuff like that. So there is, to me, data in there that comes from reliable sources, and all they did is compile it. So if it is simply something that helps frame the context, isn't the sole context, I don't have any problem with it. I think so. You understand what I'm saying? If it's the only thing we look at, that could be real limiting. If it is part of what we will look at, then I'm very much for that.
I guess I'm a little
I meant
unclear on what the
starting off
motion
point.
was.
Okay.
The motion was that we would accept this data as a jumping off point in lieu of having any other data with which to start. Because we don't have any data. We don't. Unless, Linda, you've got some that I'm not aware of. But they explain in this book, it explains what normalized data means. Like not every city that they looked at has an airport. So the airport was removed. That way, it's normalized. Not every city has an animal shelter. So they normalized by removing that aspect so that then they were comparing apples to apples. The same departments in cities. That's what normalizing data does. And that's not manipulation in the negative sense. That's just making sure that you're looking at equivalence across the board. So okay, and I can rephrase my motion. I move that we accept this data as a beginning framework with which to then accumulate more data from any source anybody else deems worthy in order to give context to our budget.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and then we have a second motion. So we'll be voting on the second motion. Anyone else have anything before we
Mr.
vote on
Mr. Ma-
anything? Because I have some things too. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Roger.
I think we only need to vote on one motion. I heard her motion as removing. I
There's
think she
two
was
motions.
removing the first one and putting
So
a substitute.
Roger, we'll, there's two motions on the floor. There are two motions made. We'll vote on the second one. If the second one fails, we'll vote on the first one.
Okay.
And so if the first one or the second motion passes, then we will, then we won't vote on a second one. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to put forward the thought that I can't speak for Paige, but based on the work they've done and the presentations that they've made to us, I feel pretty secure in saying that they would be more than happy to sit down with Jim and go through their data with him and answer any questions that he might have, so that he could be intimately familiar with it and let us know which portions of it, he deems highly reliable, moderately reliable, or not at all. And I from reading the very front inside cover of that document, it seemed to indicate to me that they're not claiming that this is perfection. And I think they would be very open to talking with Jim. And then if he points out somewhere where they've looked at something from an inexperienced point of view, that they'd be willing to go back and look at the same numbers from any view that he would suggest. So I'm just throwing that on the table.
Hey, Rick?
I picked that document up earlier this week, and I will have to admit I was very impressed with what Paige accomplished. It's an extensive document. I spent 2.5 hours reading that thing, and I don't know if I absorbed half of it. It deserves at least one more read by me. But given that, I also found myself questioning some of the numbers that I saw in there and some of the processes I found in developing that. I think there's a lot of good information in there, but I don't want to give that document any more credence than anything else we might come across in developing a budget. It's interesting information. I'd certainly like to verify anything we give any further credence than that.
Okay, anyone else? Heidi?
Yeah, I don't mean to diminish the efforts by Paige at all, because like Rick just pointed out, they have put a ton of time and effort. And so this is not to diminish that at all. I think that we're grateful that they are interested in the process and that they are willing to pitch in and try to help gather some data. I guess I'm just a little confused, because what I thought I remembered the motion was is that we were not asking staff, that we were just going to rely on this. And I'm not really comfortable with that. And I'm not as comfortable saying we're going to use this as the start and then go from there. We've got Jim who just came in, and I feel like he's in charge of the finance department, and we should look to him for some guidance. So that's where I'm going to feel the most comfortable. And certainly he can look at that document, and we will look at that document. I just don't know if I want it to be like the start point.
Chris, you had your hand up.
Well, yeah, I guess I guess I need some clarification. I didn't hear a all or nothing motion from Claudia. I heard that we were going to include consideration of this data in our process, as opposed to exclude consideration of any of this data in our process. And since the process is a multi-month process, I don't see how just throwing the baby out with the bathwater is productive. And I guess maybe I would invite Rick and or Linda and or Heidi to construct a motion around this data as a friendly amendment, if that's okay with Claudia, so that a motion that is within their comfort zone is what's on the table. Because it's not about confrontation, it's about trying to allow reliable data into our process.
Rick?
I don't know that we need a motion. We've got a document in front of us. It can be used as necessary, but I don't see why a council motion to adopt this document in any form is necessary.
Agreed.
I
Linda?
agree too. I was going to say that too. I just don't see the need for a motion at all. It's not to say we can't look at this data, but I don't know why we have to say that that is going to be our starting point. And I do think that we do get data from staff. So I just want to put that out there. I don't want to say that we get no data in our process. And then also to Heidi's point, Jim is new and has a lot of experience and expertise, and I really want him to be leading this process and working with us. So.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so,
what we have on the floor right now is we have two motions. Well, we have a motion right now. I'm gonna go ahead and call for a vote on a motion. The second motion that was made, which would be use this as a starting point, I believe. Madam, is that what that motion? Use this as a starting point for that. So with that,
Mr. Mayor, I have a discussion point.
okay,
Claudia, maybe this could be simplified. I'm going to propose a potential third motion, and if that works for everybody, then maybe Claudia, you would be in a position to just withdraw your two previous motions, and I would withdraw my second. And my potential third motion would be that we, as a council, ask Jim and whatever other staff he deems necessary to study the page data, contact them, have whatever conversations he deems appropriate, and come back to us on the 18th and include that in his presentation.
Sure, I'll second that. And I'll withdraw my other two.
Chris, may I friendly amend your friendly amendment?
okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Heidi, then Linda.
I don't really feel, I know Jim's got a lot on his plate, and so I'm a little uncomfortable with the requirement that he sit down and meet. I certainly think he could review their information and give us any feedback, but I guess I just am not sure in that amount of time how much time he's going to have to sit down and fully go over everything with that organization.
And I suggested that just as an option, if he deems that something he wants to do. So I'm not directing him that he has to do that. My intention was to say that he take control of the document, he review it, study it with whomever else he deems appropriate, which could include reaching out to Paige and discussing their process and their analysis if he deems that appropriate.
Okay, Linda?
Just so I understand, is it safe to say that the amendment then is just that he looks at that document and he comes back and gives us his feedback on it at the next budget meeting?
Yeah. Yes, and he takes whatever actions he deems appropriate with regard to that document.
Okay, Linda?
I guess I feel the same way about this motion as I did about the previous one. I don't know that there's a need for it. I think Jim is going to look at all the information that he has available to him and decide what is best and come back and present that to us. And I don't think that we need to have a motion that says something, that dictates to him exactly how or what, what he has to do or how he has to do it. Certainly this, they did a lot of work and he can review that data and see if he feels that that's helpful to us. But I don't think there's a need for a motion.
Okay. All right, so regardless, we have a motion on the floor. The motion is to, by Stevens and seconded by Ortega. The two prior motions have been withdrawn by the motion maker. So with that, Connie, would you call the roll?
Stevens,
Yes,
Ortega,
Yes.
Adamson,
Just to clarify then, once again, this motion that we're voting on right now is just that he will look at the information from Paige and get back with us about it. Is that what it is?
Well, part of that motion is he'll look at it, get back to us. And in the motion, unless it was
would
changed,
you like me to read it?
yeah, let's have Connie read the motion.
The motion that I have on record right now, we as a council ask Jim and staff necessary to study the page data, contact them as appropriate, and come back to the council on February 18th and include that information in his presentation.
that is incorrect.
Can you clarify, please?
Yes, yes. The motion is that we ask Jim to review the data from Page and involve other city staff and/or Page as he deems appropriate.
So I know in the original motion, or at least the original statement that you made, that he would include it in his presentation.
Yes, yes, and he will get back to us on the 18th with whatever information he chooses to bring to us.
So let me clarify in my own mind, because if I have to break this tie, I want to understand it. What you're asking for is to review it, which is great. He's going to do that anyway. Work with other staff members, call Paige if needs be. But the part of the motion that I want clarity on is include it on his presentation in the 18th. So we're telling him to bring this on the 18th, include it in your presentation, what you think of this document. It really is what that is telling me.
Yes, whatever information, assessment, whatever Jim chooses to present to us, he will do that on the 18th as part of his overview. That's and it doesn't dictate anything other than he'll include his consideration when he presents to us. I mean, I don't know how to make it more open-ended.
So I think that locks him in. Heidi, we're in the middle of votes actually, so I don't know how much discussion you can have at this point anyway.
Oh,
You
I was
asked me to
gonna ask a question
clarify.
Of Jim, if that was acceptable to him, or, I mean, I gather he's gonna look at this document one way or the other, but I just don't know the time frame before I vote. I just want to hear from him if that's reasonable or not reasonable for him to have reviewed it in its entirety and be able to get back with us by then.
So I'm gonna save Jim from anything. He has not seen this document. He doesn't know how big it is. I don't think that's a fair question to ask him. So we're gonna go ahead and just have the council finish voting, knowing that he is going to review this document regardless. I mean, that's going to happen because that was the only thing Councilwoman Ortega has asked for. So he's going to review that. The second part of that motion is to include it in his report on the 18th is what is stuck in my head. So that's the only thing that I'm looking at, because he's definitely going to review it and definitely going to have an opinion. But if he feels like it's important to share his opinion on it or not, I don't know. We would find that out on the 18th anyway, I believe. So I'm sorry, Council President, I'm not gonna have Jim answer a question that's kind of a hypothetical to him in right now. So with that, who are you on?
Jesus.
Adamson?
Stevens and Ortega, yes.
So Stevens, you're still a yes? Ortega, you're still a yes?
Yes.
So now it's Adamson.
Adamson,
I definitely want to hear Jim's feedback on this document. But since he hasn't even had a chance to look at it really yet, I'm going to vote no, just so that we're not dictating at what point he would come back and report to us.
Bray,
I'm gonna say that I don't think it's out of the purview to ask staff to look at something and to give us an impression. I think that's all that's being asked for here.
Yeah, I just,
It's not to do a deep dive, not to find the errors in it or anything. It's just to get an impression. So I'm gonna vote yes.
Cheatham,
No,
Leggett,
I'm gonna vote no. I'm just gonna restate, I don't think we need a motion on this. I think Jim can look at the document and, I mean, he will look at the document and decide what needs to be done with it. So I don't think we need to make a motion.
Mayor Blatt,
Thanks, Linda. You know what, I'm going to, I know that Jim is going to review this document. I know that it's going to be a part of his thing. I agree. I don't know that we need a motion to do that. That's not what this meeting was intended for to start with. And so I'm going to vote no on that as well. But I will commit to the council that he will have a copy of this. Soon as this meeting is over, I'll give him my own copy I've looked at. And he will be well aware of it and be able to do that. And I think he's aware that if he needs to, he can reach out and call and talk to anybody he would like to, so. Okay, Claudia, any other things that you have? Go ahead.
so the other thing I want to talk about is how our FRS system affects the way we do the budget. And I believe that it is time for this city to get into the 21st century with regards to an FRS system. And I think we need to investigate what that's going to involve, if it's better to outsource that, if it's better to buy a system, lease a system, pay for a service. We've got to get with the 21st century. We absolutely have to. And it's something that has to be, and it is part of the budget process, because the way we keep our records and the way information is relayed is completely dependent on that FRS system, which is dreadful.
Okay, I just wanted to get some clarification. So you know, Claudia, we wholeheartedly 100% agree with that statement. That being said, there's legislation right now in the process of the state saying this is the financial system that you have to run. You have to do this, and they're threatening to take dollars from us to pay for that. And so that, though we agree with you, we've got to see what the legislation does with it. I know Jim's been looking at, he and I have had a couple in the last 2.5 weeks. We've had, I don't know, 3 or 4 meetings, and every meeting he talks about the system that we have right now. And so that was definitely going to be talked about anyway. So I think you're right on. It's just right now we kind of have to see what legislators are going to do with that, if they're going to force it or not. Then I got Rick, and then Chris, and then Roger.
I'd like to take that a step further, Claudia. I think what this city needs is more than an FRS system. I agree with you, and I've been looking into this. I've talked to the Association of Idaho Cities. There's a company called Cassell, CASELLE, that offers an ERP system for municipal management that has one area they call community development that deals with permitting, planning, zoning, inspection, code violations, and approvals. Another one that deals with property tax collection. One part of it is payroll. Another is utility management. Another is the general ledger system. And I haven't dug deep enough into it to see if they get into animal shelter and all the other things that we do within our city. But I think we need to try and find a coordinated single system that works everywhere. So I can sign in with my address and I can buy a dog tag. I can pay my water bill. I can ask for a permit to remodel the kitchen. I can do it all online and simplify the process. So I agree. It's going to be a very expensive and very long process to make this movement. I've been through 2 data conversions in my working career, and both of them took over a year and were multi-million-dollar projects. And I'm sure that municipal management would be equally as difficult. But we've got to do something. You're right. We've got to get out of the 20th century.
And I just want to find out, what is it going to cost? Because everybody says, oh, it's going to cost millions of dollars. How many? 20 million, 2 million? Because if it's going to save us money in the long run, it's worth the investment.
That's right.
You know, I'm all about the return of investment. So thank you, Rick.
Council, I want to pull everything back. I don't want to chase a rabbit down any holes right now. I want to remind you, legislators right now may be taking that out of our hands anyway when it comes to the financial system. And so with that, if that happens, regardless of what we want to do, state of Idaho is going to dictate what they do, possibly. I don't know if that's the case. And I want to remind us also, this meeting is about the budget development part, not what we're going to do with the budget. And so with that being said, just please, let's stay within the realm of what we were supposed to be talking about here. Chris, I see you, and I'm going to call on you just a second. You're up next anyway. But I want to remind everybody, let's not chase those rabbit holes. I think Claudia's got 2 good things so far that she's suggested, and it's down. We've talked about it a little bit, and the state may be forcing our hand on the financial end of things, but I don't think that stops the discussion in the future, not necessarily today, on what we do with our computer system. With that said, Chris, if you've got something about the meeting, we're all ears.
Well, I have a clarifying question first, and then yes, I have 2 points. One is, I'm unclear whether you said that, because what you said is the state may tell us that is the system we have to use. I just want to clarify whether or not you are saying that the state may tell us that a DOS system is what we have to use, or.
Thank you for that clarification. No, what I said is the state has a system. They're trying to force all cities and counties to use their system.
All right. Okay.
Not a
So
DOS system.
all
I
right.
think DOS went out in the 80s, and so.
Well, it did, and that's why I wanted to clarify and make sure
Yeah.
that you weren't telling us that the state is going to require if they require anything, that it will be a DOS system that they're.
No, I'm confident it will not be a DOS system, but they are, and I don't know, I just know there's legislation now that they're
Right.
arguing and talking about that, so.
Right. Okay, I'm grateful.
Jim has something to say here.
Yeah, so as much as I would like to be able to agree with what the mayor just said about having confidence in how the state of Idaho operates currently, I can't say that with 100% confidence. I know from my experience in other states, sometimes what is done at the higher levels of government isn't as high in the scheme of things. So it's entirely possible that it wouldn't necessarily be a step forward in the direction that it is looking to go. But having said all of that, I don't know. I can certainly I would like to have an opportunity to talk with the state and maybe find out a little bit more about what they're looking to do.
So then, the points that I mentioned is, one, I believe that I would like, and I don't know tell me if this isn't the correct meeting, but a piece of data that I would like is we have our population census growth data. I would like data on the number of city employees in all our 5 categories, full-time, half-time with this, seasonal, quarter, all those. And over the last 10 years, and the reason I think that's important is it helps create that context of where we've been, where we are, and, where we might be going. So I would like to request that as a piece of data. And then I also, Tom Kirkman last year brought up the concept of consolidation. And obviously we have a successful example of that in Fleet based on the numbers that he presented to us recently. And I would like us, as part of our overall budgeting, to look at other opportunities. Tom's particular opportunity was consolidated purchasing for, standard supplies, be they janitorial, office, whatever. So I would like us to look at that as part of our process. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Chris. I just wrote those down as the 7 and 8. Okay, Claudia, do you have anything else? Okay, who would like to go next on the budgeting process? Linda.
I just want to go back to one of the suggestions brought up earlier. I think maybe it was Chris's, about the presentations from departments. And I think maybe, and correct me if I get this wrong, but I think the suggestion was that they give us the presentation in advance and not present it to us in the way that they have been by going through it all, and that we study it in advance and then just focus, spend our time asking questions, or spend the presentation time asking questions. And I certainly have no issue with spending most of our time asking questions, but I do find it helpful to have them go through their presentations in detail. I don't feel that they're just reading them to us, and I don't think they should, if that is all they're doing. I think it should be more than that. But it helps me really get a better understanding and even know what questions to ask to hear them go through it thoroughly. So if that maybe requires a little more time for the presentations, then maybe we need to consider that. But I don't want us to move away from, I guess I don't want us to move in the direction of less time, because I find that is helpful. I really get a better sense of what departments do, what their needs are, where they are trying to save money or innovate with new ideas. I mean, I want to hear as much about all of what they're doing and what their challenges are as possible. So I don't want to remove any of that from the process.
Okay, Linda, do you have anything else? Because Claudia has, I think, a question for you, but do you have anything else?
Not at the moment. I
Okay.
might think of something.
All right, Claudia.
With regard to that, I would prefer to not get those PowerPoint presentations printed and given to us. I think that that's a colossal waste of money, paper, time, ink, all of it. They can email us the presentations, then we can bring them up whenever we want and we can follow along. And again, let's get with the 21st century and quit killing so many trees.
Okay, Chris, it looks like you've got a thing.
Yeah,
for-
I mean, yeah, I'm certainly, I can be patient with people pretty much reading their PowerPoint to me. But what's important to me is that I want it ahead of time, because if I'm trying to honor their presentation, it's hard for me to simultaneously really think deeply about questions that I might have. And so I would like the PowerPoints ahead of time. And then I would like an opportunity, not presentation and then immediately, questions and then moving on. I would like it some kind of a structure that allows me to study the PowerPoint in advance. Then I'm fine with sitting through a presentation. And if I've had it in advance, then I can probably articulate my questions during that same moment. But if I haven't had it in advance, I'm not comfortable that I've really been able to study and absorb at an appropriate level to ask sophisticated questions.
Okay. Roger, you just went off mute.
Yep. Mayor, the budget process to me is that we need to get out in front of it instead of driving behind it. And I think part of it is that we get together and try to articulate what we see as our main goals are of developing this budget. And then the departments have to address that in their presentations to a degree. In other words, just like we do a comprehensive plan with our planning department, we do, how there are all those things that if a development meets this and this and that, we ought to have enough of a plan that our departments can tell us what part of our plan they are addressing. And I really think that's an infrastructure we put in place ahead of things instead of behind things.
Okay. All right, Chris, you got something else?
Yeah, just to dovetail with that, AIC, as part of their fall digital conference, had an excellent presentation and on the necessity. First of all, the presenter said you've got to have a strategic plan. But if you don't have a strategic plan, you have at least got to articulate what he called budget drivers, which are basically budget priorities. And I strongly believe that budgeting without focus and priorities is not the most effective plan. So I concur with Roger 100%.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other comments? Linda, do you have anything else before I move to Rick? Okay, Rick? He's got no comments. So I don't even know how to take that in this meeting. But okay. So what we've got, Rick, if you don't really have any comments, that you just kind of want to see what Jim comes up with and everything. I think there's been some great suggestions on this. I know I've got 7 or 8 pages full of things, and I know Jim's got about the same amount, if not more. Then we'll have him put some things together and do all of what we need to do there. And on the 18th, we'll be back here with Jim's suggestions of how we move forward with the budgeting process and stuff like that. I am interested, Roger, in what you said, this last thing that you said. And so maybe what we'll end up doing is, because starting next week, assuming the governor doesn't move us back again to stage 2, we'll be all back together again. So sometime before we start the budgeting session, we'll probably end up trying to put a meeting with the council together to go over, if nothing else, but goals and ideas. I'm pretty confident you can't put a strategic plan together in an afternoon, but we can definitely get some budget drivers and stuff. So with that, we'll do that. Claudia, you got your hand up? You're muted.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to say to Jim, you know, any suggestions that I've made, I'm not stomping my hand on the desk and demanding that you incorporate it. Obviously, you have a lot of experience in this and I do not. So, but I was just coming at it from a perspective of, I really feel that it needs to be clearer and simpler and cleaner. And so that's where my suggestions come from. But clearly you've got, like you said, 100 years of experience in budgeting. So I'm looking forward to hearing your suggestions.
I only look that old, but I don't actually have that many years.
Okay, then, Roger.
I just want to thank Jim for being patient and enduring all of this that we've thrown at him today. I think part of it is that we want our budget to achieve more than it has, and we're counting on you to facilitate that.
Okay, all right. Okay, then, council, thank you very much then. We will see you tonight at 5:30. And with that, thank you. We are adjourned.